This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
2 years ago in England, there is an organization, of course there is an equivalent here in the United States called Camp Simcha. And Camp Simcha, the organization in England, was started by an exceptional young man by the name of Plancy, whose father, like me, is a Scottish rabbi. He plays the bagpipes very well, by the way. And he started Camp Simcha, and they have two camps, two retreats. One is a retreat for parents who are dealing with children with cancer, and the other is a camp for parents who are dealing with children with worse diseases than cancer. Of course, there are many childhood cancers which are completely curable, but there are other conditions which are not curable. So this retreat, this camp, is for diseases which are not curable. And so I went there, flew to London, and spent an incredible, it was truly a life-changing weekend with families who are really struggling with the biggest challenges you can possibly imagine. And so it was, with Siyata Deshmaya, extraordinarily successful, so much so that ladies asked for a second shir. And at the second shir, they all told me something which came as a huge surprise to me, which I'll come back to in a second. But if you're going to be successful at anything, of course, as I said, you need Hashem in your life. And because our interactions were successful, there was no fewer than 14 couples who wanted to schmooze with me on Motzei Shabbos and ask advice. Now, you don't have to be a mathematical genius to work out. Shabbos goes out that time of the year, around about January, in England, around about, 7 o'clock, I'm guessing, 7 o'clock. So how much Motzei Shabbos was there left for 14 couples? And if you go and see a rabbi, as I think you all know, you expect to spend a long time schmoozing and telling him all of your worries and all your troubles. But because there was so little time left, Mrs. Plancy, and Mrs. Racheli Plancy, she told all the couples, you've got 20 minutes maximum, which I'd never ever come across in my life before, because when people come to see me, it goes on forever. And so the first couple sat down and they told me the condition that their child was suffering from, which was very serious. And then they started to talk about other things. And I felt a little bit like, you go and see your doctor, your MD, and how long are you officially allowed with your MD? I think it's 15 or 20 minutes is the official cutoff point. And I felt a little bit like that. And I said, look, I'm sorry, I feel a bit like a doctor. We've only got 15 or 20 minutes together. Any second now, Racheli Plancy is going to stick her head round the door and say your time's up. So let me ask you a question. And this question just literally came into my head, Mina Shamayim. I said to them, young couple sitting opposite me, how's your marriage? And they looked in total shock at the question. And I said, how's your marriage? So they both sort of, that when you're trying to communicate with somebody but you don't want people to know that they're sort of trying to look at each other, and they both started to speak at the exact same moment. And the wife said, great, and the husband said, dreadful. And then the young lady got very upset, and she said, we're not on the rocks. And I said, my dear young lady, I didn't suspect or think for one moment that you are. It's just that my wife, and this is going back 2 years ago, 18 months before, had fallen down the steps and broken her shoulder. As a consequence, I said, she's in a lot of physical pain a lot of the time, and a lot of emotional pain, psychological pain a lot of the time. And because she's not a complete tzedekah, sometimes she gets a bit short-tempered and she shouts at me. Not being a complete tzaddik, I sometimes shout back. But that's nothing compared to the pain and the emotional pain that you're going through. So how's your marriage? So then they started to tell me. And I said, okay, now I've only now got 3 minutes left. It's the end of the consultation, and a piece of paper says, I'm going to write your prescription. So I tore off a piece of paper, and I took out a pen. I said, you're going to go out together every Sunday night on a date night. You are not going to take your cell phone with you. You're going to go and remember and recall the loving young couple that you were before this poor little sick baby came into your life. And just remember that you love each other very much. And the guy said to me, not take my cell phone? What if there's an emergency? No, I said, you're not listening carefully. I said, don't take your cell phone. You can take a cell phone, but not your cell phone. And your father or your mother or whoever it is that's looking after your kid If there is an emergency, they'll phone that cell phone. But everybody else, they won't be able to get hold of you, so you two can just concentrate on each other. And then Mrs. Plancy stuck her head through the door and they were thrown out, and the next couple came in and they sat down and they told me the problems with their son, and I said to them, and how's your marriage? And this was the exact same formula all the time. And indeed, obviously, the stress that a couple like that are under is enormous. It's a constant worry. They get really, literally sick kids who could, Rahman al-Islam, give the neshama back to Shemayim any second. Their whole life is rushing to and from the hospital. And that was the other thing that I discovered when I was talking to them in that extra share that the woman asked me to give. Because they told me, I suppose if you thought about this, you might have worked it out. But I hadn't. They told me that every single one of these women, that their well children, their children who weren't sick, every single one of them really very much disliked their sick sibling. Why? Because this kid, it's not their fault. I can see the women are clever. Then they are sucking every bit, every ounce of care, attention, time that their parents have. There's no time for me because they're rushing to the hospital. There's a constant worries. Every single one of these kids really, really objected strongly and disliked, sometimes hated, the way that kids do, their sick sibling. So I was there just a few months ago. It was my second time. I never asked to be invited back. Baruch Hashem, it usually happens. In this case, I'm begging them to invite me. It's so humbling to be there. And when I came this time, it was the exact same format, the exact same hotel as last time. The only difference was that the sisters of the sick kids, they'd asked me to give them a share as well. So I did. And then their brothers got very annoyed. Why are the sisters getting the share? Why don't we get a share? So that was an extra 2 sharing. And it was tremendously interesting because these kids, the ones who really object to the fact that their sick sibling is totally derailing their lives, it was important to speak to them. In fact, I even suggested that I would do a weekly share, which I'm looking forward to starting after Pesach. So I'll be giving a telephone little share to the siblings of these sick kids, which is a wonderful zechus. But you can imagine yourself in that situation. Picture yourself as one of the kids who got a sick sibling, who's taking everything that you should be getting from your parents away from the parents and absorbing it into themselves. I mean, can't you imagine them? Of course, the title of this share is, I didn't ask for this. Beating life's challenges or being beaten by them. But can't you imagine these kids saying exactly that? I didn't ask for this. I don't want this kid in my life. Everybody else is able to have family vacations and go out as a family and, enjoy themselves. But we can't, we don't do this sort of stuff. Can't you imagine the kid objecting strongly? When I was a kid, my mother had this great idea that I should learn to play the violin. That's until she heard me playing the violin. But anyway, and I hated it because there I was with my buddies and my friends from school. Straight after school, were kicking a football and having fun. And there I had to stand at a music stand playing boring scales. And I objected to it. Wasn't there lots of bits of your life that you objected to? I didn't ask for this. I understand the kids saying this. I didn't ask for this. Good for you. After all, if you ask for a test, you're making a big mistake. Who asked for a test? David HaMelech asked for a test. And the Chazal said that was an enormous mistake. You should never ask for tests. So this hashkafa, I didn't ask for this, seems to me to be a rather secure Jewish perspective. Nobody should ask for Nisyanis in life. You didn't ask for it, did you? Actually, did you? I mean, the tough stuff that happens in all of our lives. Maybe it'd be interesting, the camera's pointing at me and not pointing at the hundreds of people here, but put your hands up if you've had a life without any problems whatsoever. Trust me, there are no hands going up. Right? We all go through tough times in our life. That's a given. And you don't want this? Or do you? The Gemara in Avodah Zarah tells the famous story about the Mashiach comes and Hashem is judging the nations of the world in Yerushalayim, and each one comes and claims their rightful reward for having helped Klal Yisrael learn Torah. The Babylonians said we only invented commerce and marketplaces in order to make the Jews rich so that they could learn Torah and have simchas and go to wonderful hotels like this for Pesach. And of course, the Mashiach Hashem makes ashen blotter of, as they say, of their claim. And then the Romans come and say, well, we made aqueducts and we built roads so the Jews could go more quickly to their shiurim. And of course, Hashem says, you made these roads so you could get more quickly to your bordellos, to your Beit Zonos. And each nation in the world comes and lays claim to having helped Klal Yisrael. And eventually they admit, yeah, okay, right, we did it all for ourselves. But how do we know that Klal Yisrael kept the Torah? And Hashem famously says, I testify. And the non-Jewish theologians, I assume, from their theology departments, who have a fleeting familiarity with the Bible, says, isn't there a verse in the Torah which says, Boni matem l'Shem Elokechem? Don't you say that the Jews are your children? And isn't a father, posel le'edus, unable to give testimony about his own son? Of course. So I mean, it's very nice that you want to testify about them, but you're no good. And Hashem says, not bad. In that case, I will bring Shemayim v'oretz, as it says in the Torah, that I will bring the heavens and the earth as testimony or witnesses that the Jews kept the Torah. To which another one of the non-Jewish theologians says, wait a minute, isn't there another verse that says, if it wasn't for the Torah being studied all day long, I would obliterate the universe? They're also biased, they're also prejudiced. And when then, at that point, Hashem famously turns around and says, okay, I will bring witnesses from amongst you. And Nimrod comes and testifies to the fact that Avram Avinu never worshipped idols. Lavan comes and testifies to the fact that he cheated Yaakov a gazillion times, and so on and so forth, and eventually the non-Jewish nations, because they themselves, who gave us all the tough times, have to testify and admit, yeah, the Jews passed the test, and we imposed the test on them. Very interesting idea. There's a little neshama, says in the Mussar Sfarim, is waiting upstairs in Shemayim to come here. That was you and I not too long ago. And the little neshama has a brilliant idea. He says, Rabbanu Shalom, hold on a minute. I've got a great einfall, a fabulous idea. Look, what's the best I could possibly do? I am at the moment perfect after all. I'm unblemished. Surely the best I could do is come back to you the way I am now. But I am the way I am now. So why not just stay here and give me my reward? Obviously a Jewish neshama. To which Hashem says, oh no, can you be down there and come back this way? You only get in here permanently when you face challenges, when you've faced big disasters in your life and beaten them. That is what makes you able to come back here. Not that you just get it as a free gift. And there is, if you met those who were here, I think last year at Pesach, I read to you something which is absolutely astonishing, and this is from Rabbeinu Bechaya. Rabbeinu Bechaya says in Devorim, "Ki kol nivroim, kol nivra becheftzim abertzainam." This is astonishing. Do you know that song, Little Neshamala? It's a beautiful song. The song about a neshama that doesn't want to come here, and the Malach says, "No, you've got to go." It is very moving. When I first heard it, I must admit I was a bit teary. I thought it was beautiful. And then, of course, the irony is that the neshama doesn't want to come to this world. But when time's up and it's time to go back, he doesn't want to go back either. Because it's forgotten that's the place that the neshama actually belongs. So we generally understand that none of us actually wanted to come here. Rabbeinu Bechaya says that's not true. He says, Ki kol hanivroim kulam nivra becheftzim abertzainam. Every single one of us came here with our enthusiasm and with our agreement to come here. V'kadosh Baruch Hu hadiyim bereishis habriya kol inyanim kulam. And the Rabbanu Shalom showed you from the very outset of your life everything that was going to happen to you in that life, all the challenges you would face. V'kol hamikra asidim lava alehem. And all the challenges, including at Camp Simcha, all these parents. the children that would have that were going to be very seriously ill. Not only that, he says, we were shown how long we would live, when we would die, how we would die, the nature of our deaths. And how we would live. We would live rich, we would live poor, we would struggle. And here, the Ramami Prano, who was an Italian Kabbalist, 15th century, he says, that souls, that's all of you. Listen to this. This was you not too long ago. Before you came to this world, then you were taken in, he says, it's a bit like you go shopping. So you go to, what's that store that sells men's suits, menswear, whatever it's down there. I passed one today. Or a lady goes to a dress store and all the dresses, they're all hanging there. And you choose whichever dress it is. Or the guy chooses the suit. That's your life. You chose your life. And there is no way you would have chosen this life, with all of its challenges, if you hadn't seen the whole of your life and known that you could have passed this test. Incredible. You chose to be here. You wouldn't have chosen unless you could have been successful. With your parents, with the things that happen to you in your life, with the amount of money that you earn, you can still and should be successful. Why? Because you chose it. Because you chose it. So, when I gave this talk, well, that talk, to these young, well, they're only kids, 11, 13, 14, 15, both the boys and the girls, I called it, I didn't ask for this. But that's actually not true. Because they knew not too long ago that the only way they would get into Shemayim was by asking precisely for this. Because they could have chosen other dresses, other suits. That's what Ramami Pano says, an astonishing idea. You could have come here in a different way, to a different family, faced different challenges. But you chose this life, these challenges, because you could beat them. In Bereshis, there is a well-known Rashi, and it's in the Seder of Vayeshev. In the Seder of Vayeshev, there it famously says, was the Meiser of the Mechira of Yosef that everybody knows about. Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz Meguri Aviv. And Yaakov dwelt in the land of his father's sojournings. And Rashi says there, we're all familiar with this Rashi, Bikesh Yaakov Leishev B'Shalva. Yaakov Avinu, and remember, because I'll say that Avram and Yitzchak only had their existence in order to be Yaakov. Yaakov was the Ishtam, the perfect Jew, and yet he wanted to have an easy life. He wanted to sit in serenity. He could retire to Kowloon somewhere in Lakewood and just sit and learn all day. That's what you want, is it? Kaf, it's a love, Rogsa Shal Yosef. It's that point, then the story of Yosef unfolds, which obviously was the biggest challenge of his life. And then listen to this. And this is Rashi quoting, of course, Chazal. Tzadikim mevatshim leishiv b'shalva. Tzadikim want to have a peaceful life. And the Rebbeinu Shem says, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lo dayin, Lo tzadikim, Masha Masukim, Lahem, La'olam haba. Is it not enough for you? What I've set aside for you at Olam haba? Elish mevatshim leishiv b'shalva b'olam hazeh. You want a nice life down here as well? A peaceful life? A non-challenging life? That's not what this world is. Astonishing. But it says that tzaddikim, that's like Yaakov Avinu, want to have an easy life. Who doesn't want to have an easy life? There's nothing wrong with not wanting to have challenges in your life. It's just that we say it every morning. Lo al yedei bezoin, lo al yedei nesoin. Don't give me bezionis, don't give me tests. They're coming. We are here because we agreed that when they come, we would accept them and face up to them. But we're not looking forward to it. A test's a test. You are, after all, just human beings. So we're all scared that we'll fail any test that comes along. There's another organization I'm very much involved with. I don't know between the two which one is more precious to me. One organization is an organization called Links. I'm a huge fan of the organizers. Hasidic couple from Borough Park. Borough Park, incidentally, despite what the press is saying about Haredi Jews and the measles epidemic at the moment, which incidentally, you should know that in Williamsburg, the number of inoculated kids is 95%. In the normal school system in New York, do you know what it is? 90%. In other words, Hasidic kids are more inoculated than non-Jewish kids. And guess who's being attacked? Oh, it's the Jews. Yeah, well, I wonder why. Anyway, but basically, Borough Park, in my experience, is full of chesed. And full of wonderful, wonderful balei chesed. The lady in charge of it, Mrs. Cohn, and Rabbi Cohn, their husband, she lost her parents, and she set up an organization for girls who lost their mothers or their fathers. The first time I was involved, I did a Shabbaton, I think it was 5-6 years ago. And Mrs. Cohn came and said to me, there's a young lady here. And this young lady is... her father dropped down dead when she was 12. She's now 16, and her mother's just been diagnosed with liver cancer. Would you speak to her? And I said, of course. At this point, I should tell you what I said. I haven't a clue. When you're facing somebody with these problems, you just daven for tremendous siyata d'shmaya. Whatever I said, it seemed to be helpful to her because she kept the kesher. I remember 2 years ago I came back from Eretz Yisrael. I got off the plane on Thursday. I came back from just a 4-day trip to Israel. My son was having major surgery in his legs. I was there to support him. 4 days from New York is a very short trip to Eretz Yisrael. Not only did I come back all jet lagged, I came back with the flu, and then as soon as I landed, I heard the girl's mother, Nebuch, had passed away. And I went over there to New Jersey, even though I was feeling very sick. I thought I couldn't leave this girl alone. I went into the shiva. It was just her and her sister. I have to tell you, so many times, as a rabbi, I've gone to be mechazik people in times of tzoros, but I tend to forget that the people I'm going to be mechazik are Jews. And the astonishing thing is that Jews, very often, instead of you being mechazik them, they're mechazik you. And this young girl, who's a balas tshuva, incidentally, who's, her daddy died when she was 12, and mother just passed away at 16. No, her plan was to go to seminary 2 weeks after this. That was the plan that was before her mother was nifteris, and this is the plan now. She's still going. I am going to be mechazik her. It was astonishing. I was walking up, it took 2.5 hours to drive there, walking up the driveway to the house. What am I going to say? Well, nothing to say. She was speaking to me. But what do you think when you hear a story of Nebuch, a girl like that? She lost both parents. Your heart breaks and you think, how could that happen? It's the famous question of tzaddik v'raloi. The question so fundamental to any man or woman of faith. The one that challenged Moshe Rabbeinu, who was upset when he saw the Jewish baby stuck into the walls. The Pesach story, remember that one? And said, Hashem, lama hari oisa lama zeh. Hashem says, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. You can save one if you like. And the one went on to be a very evil person who corrupted Moshe Rabbeinu's grandchildren. But it's still a hard challenge. How about this? Megillas Esther. Ish Yehudi hayasa b'Shushan Abira. There was a Jew in the city of Shushan. Shema Mordechai ben Yor ben Shimi ben Kish Ish Yemini. Shehoglan Yerushalayim Haglasher Haglasa. Etc. Etc. Next possible. He omenes Hadassah. And then he brought up, I suppose, Hadassah. He Esther. Hadassah is really Esther. Bas Doida, his niece. Ki ein lo av v'em. She had no mother, she had no father. Manara yifas Torah v'tovis marim. And she was very beautiful. And when her mother and father died, Mordechai took her as a daughter. But it's already told her the mother and father had died. Why does it have to say that twice? It says mother and father died, and then it repeats it. Mother and father died. So why does it repeat it? So the Al Shach HaKodesh says, it repeats this to tell us the fact that she never knew her mother or her father. Her father died the night of her conception. Her mother died the moment of her birth. She never knew those people. Isn't that a terrible tragedy? Of course it's a terrible tragedy. And yet, from that terrible tragedy, through that terrible tragedy, because of that terrible tragedy, that double tragedy, she became Esther. She became a sort of person who would grow in stature to such a degree that she would be able to save Klal Yisrael. You. I'm only here speaking to you tonight because of Esther. And you think of the story, it's just like the story I told you about that girl from Links. Nebuch, oi, ah. And it is a Nebuch and an oi. On the other hand, it depends what that girl would her choice, what she would do with her circumstances. In her case, she was going straight off to seminary. In Esther's case, she could have turned around and said, what a Nebuch I am. It's a Rachmana's case. You can't expect too much from me. I didn't know my daddy, and I never met my mom. I'm a Nebuch. No, she wasn't. As Rabbi Dessler famously says, the opposite of Ra, Resh Ayin, which everybody says is Tov, is Ayin Resh. Ayin Resh is the word air. It's the root of Hisaris, catalyst, awakening. A person can take terrible circumstances in their life and turn it the opposite way around. Resh Ayin becomes Ayin Resh and becomes somebody who is exceptional. Or what about Yosef HaTzadik? How about that? The Gemara in Bava Basra, Daf Tes, if I remember correctly, I should know this, I taught it at Daf Yomi. Rabbi, the Gemara says there, think of the worst possible things that could ever happen to a person in his or her life. Give me an example of the worst possible things that could happen to you in your life. I made a bracha before, by the way. Give me an example. Well, certainly having a sick kid that I mentioned before. Rahman al-Islam, to lose a child. Like the Chofetz Chaim did, like so many Gedolim did. Yes, losing a child, sickness, anything else, losing somebody you love, apart from a child, anything else? Worst things, going? Loss of parnasa, yeah. Torture, rape, all these, the worst things. The Gemara says there, that all the worst things you can possibly think of that could happen to a human being, there's something that's worse than all of those. And you know what that is? Worrying about all of those. When my late wife and I, my late wife, and I used to go to in Manchester, the big cancer hospital called the Christie. When we used to go there she had cancer for 5 years, waiting for the results of tests, I have to tell you, even though the results of the test would be bad, it was much better to hear that than waiting to hear it. The worrying about bad news is much worse than the bad news itself. And imagine that you, all these horrible things, and the worry of it, well, there was one place where these worries, and the sort of person that these worries would be the constant of their life, and that is if you're an Eved. If you're an Eved, you have no rights whatsoever. If your master wants to starve you, he can starve you. If he wants to sell you, he can sell you. If you've got children with another slave and you love her and you love your kids, they become property. And in Rome were sold as an item aged 9. And if he wants to murder you or rape you or torture you, you've got no rights. You're a piece of furniture. And the society that treated the Ravodim worse than any other society was which one? Mitzrayim. As we said in Haggadah, everything they did to the Jews was beforech, with rigor. And not only that, if you were sold to be an Eved in Mitzrayim, you were never going to get out. No slave ever or could ever escape from Mitzrayim until we go out from Mitzrayim. So imagine you were an Eved in Mitzrayim. So any of the worst things that can happen to you can happen to you anytime. So you got to worry about that all of your life. And imagine you were sold there and put in that situation by your brothers. The ones who should have had your back. The ones who should have protected you the most. They put me in this situation. Well, even the Gedolim were human beings. Yaakov wanted a life of shalva. But you know what? When Yosef is in a situation like that, and of course, don't forget, he gets a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and Potiphar takes him as an Eved, and he's very successful, and everybody likes him, the master likes him, the other servants like him, and of course, his mistress likes him and tries to get him to commit adultery repeatedly, and he refuses. And one day she manages to get everybody out of the house, and she tries once again to seduce him. He refuses, and beats the rap, as it were, runs away, and is still accused, still put in prison, and has to suffer. Can't you imagine him saying, Kayli Kayli Lama Zavtani, as David HaMelech said? But Yosef Atzadik didn't say what David HaMelech, or didn't think the negative understanding of that is not, of course, what David HaMelech meant. But the posh idea of giving up, he never gave up. Because Yosef Atzadik knew that everything comes from Hashem. Oh, and he told me in a Nevi'us that I'm going to be a king. So therefore Hashem said that it's going to happen. And I'd been shown that before in Shemayim. So even though I'm in prison for 10 years, I'll still stick faithfully to my assumption that Hashem knows what He's doing. Not only that, there is an astonishing Medrash Rabbah, and the Medrash Rabbah says an interesting thing. You know the story of when, in the story of Yosef, Yaakov is told that this king guy in Egypt wants and is demanding that if we go back down, says Yehuda to him, if we go down to Mitzrayim, don't appear before me unless you got with you this other brother that you spoke about. And of course, is Yaakov keen to let his other son go? Absolutely not. And at that point, what happens is, Vayama Yisrael, Lama Hariyoseli. Why have you done this to me? Why have you been bad to me? To tell him there's another brother. So this is what the Medrash Rabbah says. Listen to this. This is astonishing. Vayama Yisrael Lama Hariyoseli, Reb Levi b'Shem Reb Chama Bar Chanina. Ma'olam la'amar Yaakov Avinu dova shel batola. Never once in his life did Yaakov Avinu say something which was, how would you translate that? Shtus, nonsense. Except then. Elakach Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu. When he said that, Hashem said to him, Ani osek lahamlich es b'noi b'Mitzrayim. I'm busy moving circumstances, moving the piece in the chessboard to make sure that his son Yosef is the king in Mitzrayim, and he's complaining. How often in life have things happened to you, and we agreed at the beginning, or towards the beginning of the year, that nobody here has had a life which hasn't been troubled. But how many times, when you were in the middle of something really, really difficult, did you say, at the time I thought it was the worst possible thing that could happen? What comes next? But now I see it. Now I see the whole picture. That's what Hashem's saying to Yaakov. You're only looking in your pain. Your pain is part of the big thing. I'm busy separating your son from you, not because I don't want you to be happy, but because I'm going to be, through him, creating a way for your children to survive in Mitzrayim. You know, it's an astonishing thing to think how remarkable Jews are. In one of the earlier shiurim I pointed out, there is not one Jew at this hotel, I think, or if there are, I'd be surprised, who is not here except as the consequence of being from a family of refugees. Am I not right? Where did your family come from that you were born in the United States of America or England or wherever? Where? And why did they move or flee to England or wherever they fled to? Because Jews are always fleeing. Jews are always running away. Anybody here from France? Well, the French Jews are running away at the moment. It's happening all over again in Europe. And the real question is, how on earth are you here at this Torah-orientated, shear-giving, frum event of the Jewish Heritage Center's Pesach Hotel? Why are you still part of Klal Yisrael? It's just because we are who we are. And Jews know, and Jews see, and Jews understand that a difficult time is not necessarily something which is going to crush you. No. Like Yosef, and like Esther, and like this girl from Lynx, and these parents struggling with these sick kids, and probably every single one of you as well. You know that you can turn the ra into an air, you can turn something which is a negative and make it into a positive. The Chofetz Chaim famously said, Yonah the Posuk, when Moshe Rabbeinu is seeing the burning bush, and he approaches the burning bush, and And he hears the voice saying to him, take off your shoes because the place you're standing is Admas Kodesh. And the Chofetz Chaim famously says, what it means is, whatever your place in life is, that's your place in life. That's exactly what Rebbeinu Bechaya was saying. It's exactly what Rimi Pana was saying. You're not there by accident. You're here intentionally. The parents you had, the life you had, the siblings you had, that was all your choice and Hashem's choice for you. Your parents were perfect for you. They weren't perfect parents. What parent is a perfect parent? I mean, of course, as children, we're all extremely critical of our parents until we become parents. And then we discover that it's not quite so simple as we thought when we were the other side of the equation. And then we realize that bringing up children is very challenging, and parents have worries, and maybe parents make mistakes. But you know what? In the Luchais, we've got the first 5 of the Aseret Dibros are being Adam L'Mokum. The next 5 are being Adam L'Chaberei. Except number 5. Number 5 is in the wrong column, isn't it? What's number 5? Kibbud Av V'Im. Isn't Kibbud Av V'Im in the wrong place? Isn't that interpersonal relationships, other human beings? But the idea of Kibbud Av V'Im is you should know it's in the side with Hashem Yisbarach to let you know that the parents were chosen for you by Him, for you. Are they perfect? No. Nor will the children be perfect. We all make mistakes. But the first challenge you're going to meet is your parents. And therefore, are you going to say, Nebuch, my father didn't earn enough money, or he had a temper and I'm a Nebuch? Or are you going to grow from that? And the next big challenge you'll face in life is your siblings. If you were a girl, baby girl, and your big sister took you out for walks, and maybe she just loved having a new baby sister in the house. Or maybe she was very jealous of you and kept accidentally dropping you on your head on the concrete sidewalk whenever you went out. And then the people you face in life and you meet in life and you come across in your journey through life, your teachers and your schoolmates and the people, all of that goes to make up who and what you are. And Pirkei Avos famously, it says, and this is from Shlomo Volba, in the 4th Perek of Pirkei Avos, in Perek Gimel, it says, Hu haya omer, alti boz l'kol adam, never disparage any human being, but alti maflik l'kol dover, or dismiss anything. She'en l'cho adam she'en lo shah, there is no person who doesn't have a time, ve'en l'cho dover she'en lo mokum, nor is there anything that doesn't have a place. I knew a Satmar Chosid. He was in Auschwitz, and one day they were taking him out to the salt mines, him and another bunch of Nebuch, slave Jews, in the back of a truck with an SS man there with a machine gun, and there was a blowout in the front tire. The truck went off the road down a ravine, and everybody was killed except this Jew that I knew, because as they were careering down the side of this hill, there was a tree with a low-hanging branch, and he jumped up and he grabbed onto it, and he was plucked out of the truck, and everybody else was killed. Everything's got a place. So never disparage anything. It's there for a reason. But only, says Rav Shlomo Volba, a human being has a time. That means to say that your time, not just the people you meet, and the talents and the koichas and the gifts that you've been given, were part of the equation that you chose for yourself. But on top of that, the time that you were born into the world, you chose that too. With the challenges of our times, which is different to other times. You're here in these times with these challenges because you can beat them. I used to say to my Talmidim in Shar Yoshev, what would you say is the big challenge of our time? And they said, Znus. We're living in an incredibly corrupt time. And I said, yes. But if we were sent into a time which is corrupt by Znus, by definition, we can beat that. As Ben Bagbag says, everything's in the Torah. We can find a way out of that one as well. And 2 years ago, in Shavuos, when I was here, I told you the story of my first ever Shabbaton in a place called San Diego. There was a fellow there. Do you ever see a face that you just instantly like? There was an old fellow there, late 70s, and I was sitting at the front next to the Oren HaKodesh, the rows there's two Orthodox shuls in San Diego. One is one's smaller, one's bigger. This is the small one. Rows of seats, and there was an old fellow there, and he just gave me a smile, and I smiled. Sometimes you just fall in love with a face. And this guy, I mean, he was old, but he had a lovely smile and twinkling blue eyes. And so next day, after I finished giving a talk, he came up to me, and in the talk, I'd gone on to the Indian that we're talking about tonight, Tzaddik Baraloin. Why do bad things happen to good people? He came up to me afterwards, was sitting in the dining hall. He says, Rabbi Rubinstein, I want you to know that everything you said about suffering was 100% correct. I was in 14 concentration camps, including Auschwitz. And that's why I got this, he said. He held up his left hand. 3 of the fingers had been chopped off by an SS man that forced his finger into a chopping machine in the factory. And afterwards, when he sat down, another guy, younger guy, apparently lives in Detroit and spends his vacations in San Diego, came up to me and he said, Rabbi Rubinstein, I'm supposed to be speaking this afternoon about suffering. You've taken away everything I wanted to say. I was in Auschwitz. But I wanted to hear what an Auschwitz survivor would have to say on the subject of overcoming life's difficult moments. He said, one day, a bunch of us boys were standing at a corner of the barracks, but inside of the chimneys of the crematoria. And one of the guys says to us, I'm happy I'm in Auschwitz. We said, what? He said, I'm happy I'm in Auschwitz. We said to him, you crazy? You sick? You mashuga? He said, no, I'm not mashuga. And if I wasn't happy, so where should I be? Still in Auschwitz. Wow, I was overwhelmed. And then he turned around to this audience of about 400 people and he said, and if you haven't suffered, you haven't lived. If you haven't suffered, you have nothing. Because how else are you going to help other people when they're suffering? Are you going to take the circumstances that are challenging, that you chose for yourself, that you saw and you knew that you could beat, or you wouldn't have chosen it, you wouldn't be here, and beat them and turn the bad, the ra, into the air, the Osiris, the catalyst of something good? Are we going to discover, as we did in Mitzrayim, that we could beat the odds, as we have done all the way through history? Or are we going to turn and say, yeah, ich bin ein Nebuch, my mishpuch, my tata, my mama? Or are we going to stand up, as we did in Mitzrayim, and walk forward? I had Rav Scheinberg in my house, a Shabbos guest. I think I mentioned earlier one of the sharing. Rav Scheinberg 3 weeks ago. That's the son of Rav Scheinberg with all the Talis Cottons. Wonderful fellow. He told a story about his father, Rav Scheinberg. And Rav Scheinberg, as you know, was born in New York, and he was a younger man. He was crazy about the New York Yankees. In fact, he was crazy about baseball altogether, and his nickname was Lefty Scheinberg. So he's a lefty. Well, he said this in the shir, and one of the men and one of the guys, one of the bochrim in the shir, or the younger man, I'm not sure, noticed that Lefty Scheinberg wears his tefillin on his left arm, which makes no sense whatsoever, because you're left-handed, you're supposed to wear your tefillin on your right arm. So he said, Rebbe, interesting story, but if you're called Lefty Scheinberg and you're left-handed, why do you wear your tefillin there? And he said something which is incredible. When he was in elementary school, same with me, then if you were left-handed, in those days they forced you to write with your right hand. Did you have that experience? They forced you to use your right hand. And so eventually became right-handed. He says when it comes to Devorim Shebekadusha, putting on tefillin, it's what you made yourself is what counts, not what comes naturally. That was the message that Yaakov was given. Don't just sit back and think life's going to be easy. It's what you make yourself when you face challenges. That defines the sort of Jew that you are. And one last thing, when you do have tough times and you are struggling, get help. Never try and overcome mountains, big high mountains alone. Make sure you get somebody who knows the routes, knows the way to get up, and gets you safely down again. You're Klal Yisrael. There's always somebody there to help you, because you can get to the top of the mountain and down the other side. I know that because you know that, because you chose it for you just a few years ago when you were that little neshama choosing your life up there in Shemaim.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.